Okay, let's think about this for a second. What if we've been looking at aging, well, through too narrow a lens? What if it's not just biological, but also physical? Maybe even tied to, the fundamental laws of the universe. Today we're doing a deep dive into something called gerophysics. It's this emerging field asking exactly those kinds of questions. Our mission here is to really pull out the key insights from the research you've shared, give you a shortcut to understanding this pretty radical new perspective on how we age.
It is pretty radical, yeah. Gerophysics is incredibly interdisciplinary. You've got physicists, systems biologists, computational scientists, all coming together. They're trying to look at aging in a completely different way, really moving beyond just thinking about individual cells.
All right, so gerophysics, a new language for an old mystery. Let's unpack this. The core idea, as I understand it, is applying physical principles, things like entropy, thermodynamics, systems theory, to model how organisms will break down over time. It's a shift away from focusing only on DNA damage or, cells just wearing out.
Exactly. I mean, classical biology often frames aging as this slow accumulation of damage, right? Molecular, cellular damage. But gerophysics suggests looking at it as an entropic phenomenon. It's the idea that, kind of like the Second Law of Thermodynamics describes systems going from order to disorder, our bodies also over time accumulate randomness. We lose that internal balance, homeostasis, and we struggle to maintain these complex ordered structures.
Okay, entropy disorder. How does that actually show up in the body? Are there specific, physical concepts that make this more concrete?
Well, one concept that gets talked about is critical slowing down. The basic idea is that as systems get closer to a tipping point, they recover more slowly from disturbances, from stresses. And researchers are exploring if this can model how biological networks age. But, and this is really important, it's controversial, a lot of physicists push back.
Push back how?
They argue, quite rightly, that you can't just slap thermodynamic principles onto living things too literally. Biological organisms are open systems, constantly exchanging energy, adapting. They're not the closed, isolated systems you study in classical physics textbook problems.
Right.
So using terms like entropy here can sometimes be a bit, well, imprecise, maybe even metaphorical in some cases.
That's a huge caveat. So is there a risk then that gerophysics is more of a neat idea, a metaphor, than actual hard science right now, if living systems are fundamentally different?
That's exactly the challenge, and why that caution is crucial. It's moving from the, let's say, conceptual appeal to really rigorous quantitative models. Models that actually account for the fact that life is open, adaptive. It's about finding where the principles might still apply, even if the textbook definitions don't perfectly fit.
Okay, so it's not just about applying old physics rules blindly. What about the bigger picture then? If it's not just cells failing one by one, what's the systems level view?
That's the second really core idea. Systems thinking. Gerophysics looks at aging as this complex, interconnected system process. It's not just the sum of parts wearing out. Aging kind of emerges from all the interactions between different subsystems. Think immune system, metabolism, nervous system, everything working together, or starting not to. And this fits with where longevity science is going anyway, more towards multi-organ, multi-scale modeling. Physics offers some powerful tools here, ways to simulate how tiny changes at the molecular level might cascade, might ripple through the whole body.
That sounds incredibly complex to model. Is there a more sort of tangible example that helps illustrate this multi-system approach?
Yes, actually. There's something called the Health Octo tool. It was developed by researchers up at the University of Washington. What they do is use just 8 routine clinical measures, things like grip strength, lung function, certain blood markers, stuff you might get at a checkup.
Standard stuff, yeah.
Right. And based on those 8 things, they can estimate biological age with, get this, over 90% accuracy.
Wow, 90%, just from those standard tests.
Exactly. And what's interesting is while they don't explicitly label it entropy or gerophysics, the way it looks at multiple systems together really captures the spirit of it. It treats the body as this interdependent whole, not just, isolated bits.
Okay, that's genuinely impressive. 90% accuracy makes you think maybe my last physical was a secret gerophysics assessment. But seriously, what does this all mean for you, the listener? How do these complex ideas translate into potential real-world benefits down the line?
Well, the hope is if these models get refined, they could help us spot the signs of aging much, much earlier. More precisely, too, maybe before any obvious disease shows up. And if you can do that, you could potentially guide really targeted interventions, things designed not just to treat disease, but to preserve the whole system's resilience, delay that dysfunction, and crucially extend not just lifespan, but health span, the years we live healthy without chronic illness or frailty.
That's the goal, isn't it? Healthspan. And it opens up other possibilities too, right? Like, could we use physics to measure other subtle changes? I read about things like changes in fractal patterns in our tissues, or how our bodies dissipate energy, or even how stable the connections between systems are. Network instability.
Potentially, yes.
Using the same kind of physics tools that are so powerful in astronomy or climate science, but applying them to map the landscape of our own aging, that's pretty mind-bending.
It is, but again, we have to bring it back to the crucial cautions. This is still fundamentally highly speculative. It's conceptual. As we said, the link between textbook entropy and biological aging is often metaphorical right now. Organisms are open, adaptive systems. That's a huge difference.
Right, the open system versus closed system point.
And many physicists stress that using entropy loosely isn't helpful. We really need much deeper mathematical clarity. It has to go beyond just being a compelling analogy.
So scientific rigor is paramount. Beyond just the neat ideas, what's the biggest hurdle gerophysics needs to overcome to become, truly established?
Oh, without a doubt, it's experimental validation and rigorous peer review. The conceptual elegance is appealing, absolutely. But scientific credibility, that comes from reproducible data, empirical evidence, full stop.
Makes sense.
Looking ahead, though, what gerophysics is doing is helping to reframe how we think about aging. Seeing it as this multi-scale thing, molecules, cells, organs, whole systems, maybe even connecting to universal laws. Whether or not entropy turns out to be the definitive explanation, the tools and the thinking from physics offer powerful new ways to approach the problem, new ways to simulate decline, explore strategies for early detection, prevention, and, extending that healthy lifespan. This kind of cross-disciplinary collaboration is forging a richer language, really. A language to understand the body not just as a biological machine, but as a complex, dynamic, energy-dependent system, governed by principles we're honestly only just beginning to fully grasp.
So the real potential here isn't just adding years to life, but fundamentally changing our understanding of why we age. Maybe giving us the tools to intervene with a kind of physics-level precision we haven't imagined before, almost like rewriting the rules of our own decline.
Aging might not turn out to be simple chaos, and understanding the physics of how it unfolds, that could definitely bring us closer to extending not just life, but the quality of it.